Just minutes after polls closed in New Jersey's 11th congressional district tonight, progressive Democrat Ana Lilia Mejia defeated Republican Joe Hathaway to fill the seat vacated by now Governor Mikey Sherrill. It's the latest progressive victory of this election cycle, could be a bellwether for November. And joining me now from her campaign watch party is Democratic candidate Ana Lilia Mejia. Congresswoman-elect, congratulations. The AP has made the call. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm so thrilled to have the opportunity to represent the great people of New Jersey's 11th congressional district. You know, it was kind of a rough and tumble, a special primary. It was a very quick turnaround to our special general, but I think the voters in New Jersey's 11th are feeling like many voters across the country, fed up with an economy that is letting them down and watching a Democratic backslide that is really worrisome.
Did you had a very close primary. Tom Malinowski, who I believe had represented that district or an adjacent district before, was in that primary. You eked out a victory.
An adjacent district, yes.
Adjacent district. In that primary, those are the numbers there. You know, there was a little bit that the district has been a Democratic district since Mikey Sherrill won it, but it had been represented by Republicans before. In 2020, it was a 6-point margin. It was pretty close. And I saw a little bit of speculation after you won this primary of like, oh, is she too progressive for this district? Is this like someone that the primary voters like, who the general election voters aren't going to like? I wonder how you thought about your messaging in terms of the general election after winning that primary.
Look, I've lived in this district for 13 years. I've been an organizer for 25 years. I know my neighbors. And here's the thing. When I talk to working class people who are living paycheck to paycheck in this district, they feel crushed by rising prices at the gas pump, at the grocery store. They feel like their check is nowhere near making ends meet, and they feel like they're falling behind. And then I go down into another town and I talk to my suburban neighbors who own their homes, who went to college, who checked all the boxes, and they feel the pinch. They may not be living paycheck to paycheck, but the fact that Donald Trump has thrown tariffs around like Mardi Gras beads, the fact that we are in a war that has increased the cost of gas, the fact that they are losing customers, clients, if they own their own business. What I have heard are middle-class families, working-class families, both feeling the pinch of a terrible economy, feeling like some folks are feeling like they're house rich and cash poor. They are drowning in credit card debt. And then you have a president who blusters into, pushes us into a war that is now costing us at the tune of $2 billion a day or close to, and then turns around to tell the American people that we have to make do with less. Folks are fed up and we need something different. They want to send a fighter to Congress. So, no, I think folks misread this district. What we need are people who are going to stand up for working class, middle class families alike. And that's me.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the war, and it's interesting because I think you're the only national campaign, you know, for a national elected office happening during when this war sort of started and has played out. It's been kind of hard to get our sense of the electoral ramifications of the war. And what I'm hearing from you, and I'm not that surprised because it, you know, coincides with the polling, is that you weren't getting a ton of enthusiasm in your conversations with voters about what's happening with the war in Iran.
I mean, folks are just feeling like, one, we have watched during the course of my campaign, both the primary and the general, we had voters watching in horror what was happening in Minnesota. Then we had folks watching in horror as this administration tried to build a detention center, a town over adjacent to this district. We've watched in horror as our president tweeted genocidal intent. You know, the American people understand that our democracy is at stake. The irony that we are entering our 250th year, and this president is causing an incredible democratic backslide, putting to question the 14th Amendment, due process, equal protection, birthright citizenship. And again, voters understand that we need to have strong fighters in Congress. We're going to need to have strong fighters in the Senate, and we're going to need to fight against this president and his worst tendencies. And again, it starts in New Jersey's 11th, but I suspect we're going to see much of the same through the midterm elections.
Congresswoman-elect Ana Lilia Mejia. I hope you get seated more quickly than Congresswoman Grijalva did. I don't foresee any problem, but we will.
Anita had to wait a minute.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes on that one. Thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your victory tonight.
Election victories often get reduced to simple labels, but this result reveals something deeper about the current political mood. The win by a progressive candidate in a district once considered competitive is not just a partisan shift, it is a signal of frustration building across different layers of society. What stands out is not ideology alone, but the shared sense of economic anxiety that cuts across class lines. When voters who live paycheck to paycheck echo the same concerns as homeowners with stable incomes, it suggests a broader erosion of confidence in the system. People are not only reacting to policy details, they are responding to a feeling that the ground beneath them is becoming less secure. Rising costs, debt pressures, and uncertainty about the future create a political environment where bold messaging resonates more than cautious moderation. At the same time, the narrative highlights how external factors, especially international conflict, are filtering into domestic politics. Even when voters are not deeply engaged with foreign policy specifics, they clearly feel the consequences through prices, business stability, and general unease. War, in this sense, becomes less about distant strategy and more about everyday impact. Another important layer is the concern about democratic stability. References to institutional norms and constitutional principles are no longer abstract talking points. They are entering everyday political conversations, which indicates a shift in what voters prioritize. Economic stress may open the door, but perceived threats to democratic values seem to deepen the urgency. What makes this moment particularly significant is the rejection of the idea that certain districts must conform to predictable ideological boundaries. Voters appear more willing to take risks on candidates who directly acknowledge their frustrations rather than soften them. That challenges longer-held assumptions about electability and suggests that authenticity, or at least the perception of it, is becoming a decisive factor. Looking ahead, this outcome may not guarantee a broader trend, but it does raise an important question. If both working-class and middle-class voters are aligning around similar grievances, political strategies that rely on dividing them could become less effective. The real story here is not just who won, but why that message found such a receptive audience at this particular moment. It also underscores how momentum can shift when voters feel unheard, reminding parties that complacency is risky and that engagement must be constant, credible, and grounded in lived realities.